You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. ESPN has released its preseason top 10 FPI. Now, this is going to alter as we get closer to the season, but if you're not familiar, the FPI is a metric. It's not people's opinions. It's in no way subjective. It is an objective algorithm. ESPN takes the data, plugs it into their computer, it spits out the numbers. So that's basically how this ranking comes. And sometimes we look at FPI, and sometimes FPI is spot on. And sometimes you look at it and you laugh. And this is probably one of them examples. Preseason top 10 based on ESPN's FPI. Number 1, no surprise, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Followed by the Ohio State Buckeyes at 2. Defending national champ Georgia at 3. Clemson at 4, it'd be a big bounce back for DJ Uiagalelei. Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, who had an epic collapse in their bowl game, which was actually funny to watch. Notre Dame at 5. Texas, they're back. Sark's got them back from 500 to top 10. Texas Longhorns 6. Michigan at 7. Of course, a playoff team a year ago before faltering in the Orange Bowl. No crime losing to Georgia. I mean, Georgia won the Natty. Oklahoma Sooners 8. Year 1, Brent Venables. It's going to be an interesting team to watch, how they fare without Lincoln Riley. The Pittsburgh Panthers 9. No Kenny Pickett, no problem. Remember Keaton Slovis, the USC transfer, is the new Pitt quarterback. And then Auburn at 10. Who's going to be Auburn's quarterback? I remember Bo Nix is transferred out, so Zach Calzada from Texas A&M is in. TJ Finley is still there. They've obviously recruited kind of well, but man, that was a little bit of a mess last year at Auburn. Year 1 under Brian Harsin. Remember they fired his receivers coach like 3 games into the season. It really didn't go well except for the LSU game. I mean, ending their streak and winning in Baton Rouge, and that was more about LSU's collapse than anything in that ball game. But I guess Bo Nix did have some Houdini plays, but a little surprised to see that there. But what probably is most notable, by the way, if you go look at the FPI and they put, they have their rankings, as I mentioned, they've got Bama, as we mentioned, your top 10, right after Auburn. At number 11, it's where you find your Fighting Tigers of LSU. 11 in the preseason top FPI. Penn State, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M at 14. Computer's not liking the Aggies. Utah, Michigan State, Ole Miss at 17. Miami, Baylor, defending Big 12 champion, down at 19. Kentucky, and then rounding out the top 25, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Oregon at 23, Mississippi State 24, and then there's the Gators at 25. A team that I think is probably a little devalued. How about Tennessee all the way down at 28, Arkansas at 29, team that was 8-4 a year ago, won their bowl game to get to 9 wins. Anyway, I guess I always find it interesting just to look at the FPI to see what the computers say. It's not a be-all, end-all, but it is a metric. I mean, it is a metric that you can use to make certain determinations, and it is objective. There's no opinion based in there. There's no bias based in there. But when you look at teams that have a legit shot of winning the national championship, it's basically 4 teams. Bama has a 30% chance of winning the national championship. Ohio State has a 27% chance of winning the national championship. Georgia, 22%. Clemson, 11%. And nobody else has more than Texas at 2.3%. You've got Notre Dame at 1.8%, Michigan at 1.3%. So basically, it's a 4-team race for the national championship. Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson. It's going to be one of those 4 teams. And that therein is the inherent issue with college football. But the most interesting part of this is when you look at the projected win-loss. So, yes, they've got LSU projected there with the 11th, ranked 11th in the power index. But the projected win-loss for LSU with FPI is 7.7 wins and 4.4 losses. So they've got LSU pegged somewhere between 7-5, 8-4, which my point that I've made here throughout this offseason is I think Vegas, when they put out their projected win totals, is going to have LSU's win total right at 7.5. I think the over-under is going to be 7.5. That's what Vegas is going to say. Basically a 7-5 or 8-4 team. And I think it's fair. I know what happens is when you follow a team or you love a team and you tend to accentuate the positive and sort of ignore or devalue the negative. But when you realistically look at what LSU has been the past 2 years, you're looking at a team that's been 500 the past 2 years. And a new coaching staff that inherited a program with 39 scholarship players in the bowl game. We're going to talk to Ross Dellinger at the top of next hour. And Ross has a piece up at SI today. When Ross was in town, it was around Mardi Gras. He and I did connect when he was in town. But Ross went and spent a lot of time out at LSU because he was doing this feature on Brian Kelly, which was published today. And we're going to talk to Ross about it. But one of the most telling things is a quote from Brian Kelly where he talks about, I'm scrolling through right now because I want to find it exactly, but essentially Brian Kelly says, as far as organization, this was as bad as I've ever seen. Like when he got here at LSU. So it kind of sheds a little bit of light on where LSU was and how far they have to go. Although it's something that I believe Brian Kelly will do. Here it is. Here's the quote. Forgive me. I wanted to find this, so I was reading it directly to you from Ross's piece. Brian Kelly said, quote, "This is not, hey, coach, come on down to LSU. We play in the SEC West. Take your time. The health," and again, this is a quote, "the health of any program is generally about organizational health, which is communication and collaboration. Organizational health here was probably as poor as I've seen it." That's a direct shot at Ed Ogeron. I mean, he's not cracking on Ed, but indirectly, so I shouldn't say a direct, that's an indirect shot. I mean, it's what it is. You have this man who's basically built his career around organization and structure, and he's won more games than any active coach in college football, and he's telling you the organizational health here was as bad as I've ever seen it anywhere. So that's what he inherited. That's what he's building or trying to rebuild through all of that. That's going to take time. I think LSU's defensive line this year is deep and talented. I think their safety group is deep and talented. I think their receivers are deep and talented. Outside of Micah Baskerville, you don't have any linebackers that have done anything. You got brand new starters at cornerback. You're going to have all new starters on your offensive line. You added experience at quarterback with Jaden Daniels coming in. None of your running backs have accomplished a thing in college. I mean, you have just a bunch of question marks. And some of them are going to be answered to the affirmative. Like, linebacker may end up being really good. Baskerville, Jones, Greg Penn, West Weeks, like that may end up, you bring in Harold Perkins, that may end up being a really good unit. Offensive line, you may figure it out. Noah Cain, John Emery may be studs and go off. Maybe. Or maybe some of those don't work out, which is probably more likely. Some will, some won't. And so you're going to average it out in a tough SEC West. And you're probably going to be in that 7-5, 8-4 range if you get things to go your way. And like I've told you, I think this team's ceiling is 9-3. If you go 9-3 and you win a bowl game and you get to 10, that's pretty awesome for year one. I'm not saying it's the standard here or the expectation, but considering where you were on December the 2nd when Brian Kelly was hired, that would be a heck of a leap if they're able to get there. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.